By replacing the racism of the past with the racism of the critical race theory. They continue to look at race as the primary means of judging a person's character.
Yeah, it was House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy. Herein lies my greatest frustration with all this, right? And the irony is, well before we were having conversations about critical race theory and whatever else the racial issue of the day is, and the proposed solutions, which are anything but. I've talked about how many people actually pay attention to Dr. King's message versus those who will cite it and then completely ignore it. So quite literally, I mean, you think about how long has passed since MLK's dream, right? His dream speech, his dream, the one day we will judge people on the basis of content of character rather than color of skin. The irony is, here we are in 2021, decades later, and we are doing more of the opposite as a society of what Dr. King preached than we had previously. It truly is remarkable. And then it's almost like that guy knew something, that King guy. Because you take a look, for example, at Gallup. You go back to the early part of last decade or 2 decades ago even. And race relations, according to Gallup, pretty good. Upwards of 70% of blacks and whites would say, yeah, race relations are good. You take a look today, record low, with most blacks and whites saying, yeah, race relations are bad. It's almost as if we put emphasis on superficial differences, and if we teach people through machinations like critical race theory, Black Lives Matter, that a bunch of people are racist, that people are going to end up having issues with one another. So yeah, it's almost like MLK knew something. Rob Crain, former president of the Dallas Bar Association. He is an attorney. He's served many times in the show as a legal analyst and a lot of stories, actually teaming up with Reverend Richie Butler to try to do something about this. Started an organization called Together We Can. And the website, togetherwecan.one. It's togetherwecan.one. Rob, good to talk to you.
Brian, always good to talk to you, and always thinking about you guys down in Miami. You guys lead the country in dealing with some of these tragedies and issues in our country, and really appreciate y'all's leadership.
You make a good point there. I mean, this is a model that I've long said would be exported across the country, and I think it's increasingly important to because of the level of understanding and appreciation for one another. And Rob, tell us a little bit about what you're trying to achieve with Together We Can, at a time where I think it's really necessary.
We started with a program called Together We Dine in 2017, which was bringing people together to talk about race in a very safe way with very safe questions, introspective questions for us to ask ourselves and then talk about them. And the concepts of both programs are, very basically that what unites us is much greater than what divides us. And, the strength of us as human beings, the strength of us as a collective country, is in our commonality of shared values and goals. And it's so true as to race. And what you have just discussed in bringing critical race theory and what's happening in our discussions, our public discussions, is meant to divide. Instead of focusing on what we share in common as to where we want to go in our country with safe neighborhoods for all our kids, for our police officers leaving stops safely, for people police officers stop also leaving those stops safely. We all want those things. We might have a different opinion as to police training or a different opinion as to policing methodology or whatever it may be, and we may have vigorous differences in opinion, but we all want those things. And if we'll just appreciate that we're all trying to get to the same place and bring the divisiveness down a notch and bring the commonality up a notch, we're going to get to where we want to be a lot faster. And so these programs are really about bringing awareness to our commonality and also teaching ourselves about our country's history, teaching ourselves about the way God made us and that the issues we have as individuals and how we learn from our mistakes and go forward, and how we're all the same in that way.
Rob, you bring up another really good point in this conversation, which is the connection to faith. Obviously, it's a big part of MLK and his approach to things. And you take a look at what you're trying to achieve with Reverend Richie Butler. To me, the two go hand in hand. It's not a coincidence that the more we've done to take God out of society, to remove it from all aspects of education, to make it so that people of faith are even uncomfortable in a public setting to reference it. The further we get away from it, in addition to judging people on content of character rather than superficial factors, the worse things get. Is that part of the reason why you feel it's important to incorporate that aspect into your mission behind Together We Can?
You bet. And we are a religious focused group. It's not any one religion. Obviously, Pastor Butler is a Christian pastor, but we routinely have, our coalition of leaders within these programs include Muslims, Jewish faith members, people from all faiths. And we routinely have programs with our faith leaders here in the North Texas region talking about their commonality, and they have each other's backs. When something happens at a mosque out of hate, or something happens at a temple out of hate, or whether one of our black churches comes under attack, whatever it may be, those faith leaders of different faiths are right there having the backs of their faith leaders of different faiths. And I agree with you. Again, our commonality in these major faiths, and I recognize there's some extremism in any faith that is not what the core members of that faith believe in. But the commonality of faiths, the major faiths in our world share a lot of peaceful, a lot of love messages that are across those lines. And it's okay to celebrate the faiths of people in this country. It's, our foundation of this country was built on that freedom and the goodness that comes from those faiths, and how we share and should have each other's backs in our faiths. It's important.
Rob, may God bless you, and your work at Together We Can. Again, the website, togetherwecan.one. Appreciate the time, the effort.
Anytime, Brian. Thank you.